everybody. My name is Sarah Yakawanis, and today I'm going to teach you how to make these gorgeous paper tulips. Everything, all the paper and wire and floral tape and everything pretty much that I show you in this tutorial comes in my kit that I make over at paperchickadee.com, or no, it's paperchickadee.net. .com was already taken. So today I'm going to show you how to make these paper tulips. Tulips are they're not difficult to make, but gee whiz, they were difficult to figure out. So I'm really excited to show you how to make them today. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take a piece of floral wire and cover it in floral tape. Now, if you've never used floral tape before, it is a very odd thing. It really doesn't want to stick to anything at all except for itself, and even then, like a little begrudgingly, frankly. But it's a very useful thing too. So the way that you get it to stick, because as you can see, this has absolutely no stick at all. So the way that you get it to stick is to stretch it. So covering a piece of floral wire in floral tape is an act of stretching it and then pressing it against each other, or stretching it and then twisting it. So it's kind of a two-part motion where you stretch the floral tape and then you twist it around the wire. And because tulips have a pretty thick stem, I'm going to give this a bunch of layers. Sorry about the ambient noise in my apartment. People are out and about on a sunny day in Washington. And so that was 2 layers. Let's do 2 more. And again, it's just the act of stretching it and twisting it. So I'm stretching with this hand and I'm twisting with this hand. Great. Perfect, just like that. And if you don't end up getting one of my kits and you're just watching this tutorial to learn how to make a paper tulip, that's totally fine too. All of the papers and stuff you can kind of source yourself from other places. My papers are specially designed just for the flowers that I teach, but you can really do it with just about any kind of paper. And you can get floral tape and floral wire at any craft store. Or online. It's very inexpensive online. If you get it from the right place. I like Consumer Crafts. Okay. So that is all done, and it's a little bit thicker now, which is nice because tulips have a nice thick, almost like a straw. If you take them apart, it is like a little straw stem. I guess it sucks up its water and nutrients that way. So now what we're going to do is take out our sheet, and this has already been cut down. I've made a bunch of tulips with this sheet already, so you get twice as many as you see here in the kit. And this is a paper called vellum, which is really beautiful. It's a nice semi-transparent paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim right to the top, so that no white's remaining, just like that. And now I'm just gonna save some time for next time and really cut into the top of the next row. So then that next row will be all ready to go when I make those flowers, which won't be in this video, but it will be happening, I'm sure, because I really enjoy making these paper tulips. I'm very proud of how they came out. And now I'm just gonna trim this just like that, just kind of flush with the edge of the stamen shape. And I'm gonna tell you this, I'm sure, a bunch of times in this tutorial, but do not be dear with the templates that I provided for you. Paper flowers, I think, are best achieved when they are each a little bit different. So if you cut them out without stressing about cutting things out exactly on the line, they're gonna resemble nature much more clearly. So now what I'm doing is I'm just gonna roll this up. And the reason why we roll this up is because we're going to put this as the stamen on the top of the stem, and this paper has been flat its whole life. It's not known anything else. So we roll things that we want to be kind of a more rolled shape, because you want to just kind of let the paper know that it's not going to be flat anymore. And it's just kind of a nice little introduction. So I like to go back and forth. I roll it one way and then the other way. It's just a nice gentle way to get a nice tight roll without having to worry about getting it super tight that first time, because it'll just, see how much tighter that gets on the third back around. It's so much easier to do if you just kind of do it gently and don't really force it. A good lesson for life too. Just kind of let things gently happen. Okay, so now we're just going to take the first little stamen, and there is a lot of excess white on there at the bottom, which is fine. You can leave as much as you want. It doesn't really matter too much, but that's a little more than I like for my taste. And now, as you can see right here, you see how like there's like the faintest little kind of lines, like they're very faint on purpose so that you don't have to be too dear with it. We're just going to separate these little stamen parts. And for the scientists among us, these little stamen parts on a tulip are called anthers, which I think is kind of cute. It's like antlers for plants. Anthers. Okay, so now we have our anthers all separated just like that. And we have our stem that we covered in floral tape. And now we are going to just attach these to the stem. And actually, I'm going to set that, okay, I want to set that a little bit deeper, like that, just because you want the stem the petals to really have something to hang on to. So I put the stem right up to where we made the cuts in the anthers. And now I'm just going to secure that with a little bit of floral tape. You can use glue if you don't like floral tape. Floral tape is odd, like I said, and you are welcome to use glue if you'd like. You just have to hold it in place a little bit longer until the glue really sets a nice bond. So that is our stem, the base of our beautiful little tulips. I'm going to put the rest of those stamen pieces aside for a minute. And now in the kit, you get a sheet like this, and you can choose any of the colors. Obviously, the same steps work for each color. It's just a different color. But for today, I'm going to choose blue. I went with like a really kind of Eastery color theme with this kit. So blue is actually not a color that occurs in flowers too often, especially this nice light blue. You're going to get a lot of violets and deep dark blues in flowers. But this nice pastel-y blue is just kind of something that I thought would be pretty. It doesn't actually occur. So I'm just gonna, I should have not talked during that. That looks like a mess. So I'm just gonna cut out the blue and make that not quite a mess anymore by cutting, and we're just gonna cut off the white. So we don't want any white at the top or the bottom or in between. I mean, in between doesn't matter a ton. You'll see why in a minute, but I'm just cutting off that excess white just like that. Perfect. And now we're going to do the small petals first. So to do the small petal, we are going to separate them. So you can see here there's the small petals and the large petals, and we do the small petals first. And we're just going to cut really, really close to that template. Just kind of flush with it, just like that. But don't cut out the template yet because we have to accordion fold it. And now we're going to just accordion fold. And you don't really have to be too particularly careful with this accordion fold, especially because the inside petals, you don't really see the pattern that's printed on these templates or on this petal strip very much. So just kind of, you don't really have to stress too much about it. And you really don't have to stress at all about any of this. Paper flowers and crafting in general should be a really fun activity that makes you more relaxed and less stressed out. And I know that sometimes we try to be super perfect, but that's not really the name of the game with things that I like to make and the kits that I provide. So now what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is, you can see how there's this triangle right at the top and the bottom. And the first thing we're going to cut out is that triangle. And I made this very faint almost. If you don't, you can play around with different triangle shapes on this. Really feel like you really can do what your gut is telling you to do with these shapes. And that's why I kind of made them faint and of the same color as the petals themselves, just so you can play around with it and it won't stand out that you didn't cut out exactly what Sarah's triangles look like. Because you should use your ideas too if you want to, or use mine. It's totally up to you. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to cut out this small petal. And again, you don't have to be too dear with it. It's going to come out much better if you make your own natural, how your hand wants to cut it out. That's going to look a lot more like a natural tulip, just because tulips, especially tulips, do not come all exactly the same. Perfect. Awesome. So now we have 3 for the price of 1, and that's why we accordion fold them, so that you can get many, many petals out of one cut, and it really saves a ton of time. Now we have our glue and our brush, and my glue has gotten a little dry since I've been going on and on over here. Okay, so I'm just gonna load up my brush. A little hair in there happens. And we don't want too much, not too little. Just play around with it and see, you'll get a feel for it pretty quickly. And now we are going to add our glue. So I like to just add a very, very thin amount at the top of that triangle that we made. And then this whole little, I call it a stump. You want to cover this whole stump with glue. Just like that. And now we're gonna kind of like cross the legs. So we're just gonna cross that petal's legs, and that's a little too much, so I want to back off a little bit more like that. Perfect. And now we're going to do the same thing to the top. A little bit more glue. And for this top one, you only just need the thinnest amount of glue right at the very, right along just one of the sides of the triangle that we just cut out. And then we're going to cross those too. And just like that. And I think that's why paper tulips are so elusive, is because they require 2 kind of pleats like that instead of just one at the bottom, which is traditionally all you need. for most flowers, but for this one you need 2. And it is beguiling. Okay, so that's all done. And I think it's a good idea to wait for the glue to dry for just a minute or 2 on these. You really just want that bond to get set up before you do this next step, which is to take a spoon. And we're gonna take, because you see how these are kind of pointy? That's like no good. I've yet to come across a flower that's particularly pointy in its petals. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take this and hold it like so our thumb is kind of in that cup, and then just rub it against a spoon for a second or 2. And that's really gonna make that nice and smooth, just like a real petal. Awesome. And now what we're gonna do to save a little bit of time, and if you want to see how to make every single little moment of this flower, I have something called the Slow TV Paper Tulip at the same YouTube channel you're watching this on. So take a look at that if you want to know like every little detail. I don't talk during it, but it does let you see kind of like how my hands are moving in much more close detail. So to save a little bit of time, we have all 3 of our small petals all done. Now I'm just going to load up my brush again. I don't know why I like such an excessive amount of glue to start, and then I wipe almost all of it off, but that's for sure how I do glue. And this is just a regular white glue. My white glue tends to be a pH balanced white glue because that's my favorite kind, but literally any white glue will work. So now I'm just gonna add that right to the little stump. And we're gonna take our little stamen. Let's bend out these anthers. And honestly, if you didn't like doing that stamen step, you really don't have to do it. You probably won't see the stamen very much unless something like, doesn't go exactly perfectly right. You might catch a little glimpse of it, and I think it makes it a little bit more realistic. But if you don't like doing the stamen, you don't have to do it. It is optional. So now we're just going to press this up and hold it for just like a few minutes. The first petals that you put on, actually all the petals, because there's only 6 petals in a tulip, petal placement becomes more important than a lot of paper flowers tend to be, because like with a rose you have so many petals and so many options that you can really they can not be exactly the right spot and still look like a really good rose. But the tulips take some practice, and that's why there's quite so many in the kit that I sell. Usually I don't do more than 12 flowers in a kit, and usually it's more like 9 sometimes even depending on the flower, but you get 18 in this kit, and that is because there's a pretty good chance there might be a mistake or 2 in some of them. Okay, so that first one is nice and bonded just like that, and now I'm going to show you how to do the second one. And like I said, if you want to see like every single little step, watch the Slow TV YouTube on the paper tulips, which is in the same channel, I think is what it's called. I like YouTube for sure, definitely, but I'm not as like versed in like all of the specific names of things. Okay, so we have this one. And now what we're gonna do is I like to kind of match up the tops. Like you can see, I'm trying to angle it so you can see my hand cam. And we really just want those to kind of, oh, that's the sweet spot. We just want those two edges to line up, just like that. And then you hold that for a while, and then you put the other one just where those, and it kind of makes a really nice little pod almost. And just know that the first time you try this, it might not work exactly right. You just need practice. Just try the next one, and the next one will be better, and the next one will be better than that. So now you can see we've got our little beautiful little pod going with the small flowers, or the small petals. And once you get this just exactly the way you want it, let it dry, like go get a snack. Wait maybe 10-15 minutes for it to really, those bonds to really set up. Otherwise you might be mad, because now we're going to put a little bit of floral tape just at the bottom, just to make sure that these are really, really going to stay on the stem. And you don't have to go all the way up with this. Just a little bit at the bottom will really help those secure. But if you don't wait until the glue dries and you just rush right ahead and put on the floral tape, it does have a tendency to nudge these little petals. And with such a precise placement, you really just want to give it a little bit of time to dry. So now we're going to do the big petals. So the big petals is the other half of that strip. And this is just the same thing, already accordion folded, because you don't need to know how to do that again. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out the triangle just like before. And now, oops, I want to do the top triangle too. So we're just going to, it's just like it was before. Get that top and the bottom done. Triangles cut out, and then cut out the actual petal shape itself. And because we're accordion folding, we only have to do this once, which is awesome. Just like we did for the small petals, I'm going to show you one more time just in case it doesn't translate exactly the same. I think it's pretty similar, but it's always good to show you twice. So on this one, we are just going to, again, right along the side in a thin layer at the bottom, and then really cover that whole stump with glue. And then we're just gonna cross the legs again. Just like that. Oh, and something I didn't mention on the small one is it's gonna kind of want to be like that at first, and you just want to bend it down. Don't fold it. It's really important not to fold this stump at all, because the fibers in the petal, like the fibers in the paper, will break if you give it a nice hard fold. So you don't want to do that, because if you break those fibers, you'll have a tendency the petal will have a tendency to kind of almost wilt under the weight of gravity over like maybe a week or two. So now at the top, just like before, we're just going to add a really thin little, that's a little too much. I'm going to take some of it off and crisscross them again, just like that. And again, wait for it to dry for a few minutes, just to make sure those glue bonds really set up before you put the spoon to it. And now we're just going to smooth out some of those really tight points, because that's not really what a flower is. And this, and that's why you wait for the glue to dry, because it'll want to kind of come apart if you don't, which I didn't on this one because I wanted to show you how to do it. But and there you go, just like that. And we're going to just cut off those little antennas. I think I might have skipped telling you about that part of the step, but it's pretty evident. We just want a nice pointy little petal, just like a real tulip. And so you don't have to watch me do all of those. I have some already done. So we have this one. Now I'm going to add a little bit of glue right to that stump. And now we want the seam of this, when the two little petals meet, they kind of make a little seam. And we want the center of this first big petal to be right on that seam. And it takes a little bit of care and careful, but like I said, for a tulip, petal placement is like the most important part. So we just want that. Oh, that's perfect. I love it. Okay, so because petal placement is so very, 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 very important for this petal, and this first large petal is really going to set up it's going to really set up the structure. It's gonna, all the other two petals are really gonna want that first petal to kind of be its armature almost. So we just want it to dry. So let that dry, and you can always take a minute, go do something else for a second, watch a TV show maybe. I would say start another tulip, and by the time you get the first small petals done for that second tulip, your first tulips will be dry. But like, please give this like some time to dry, because the petal placement is just going to be way easier if you take a little bit of time with it and really let those glue bonds set up. So I have this one, which I did before I started this tutorial, and I think I might have even done it before I did my makeup, so this has been drying for a while. I'll set this other one aside. Okay, so now we're just going to add the second petal. And again, we just want it to be kind of cover up the seam of the three interior petals. So basically, the big petals go centered with the seam that the small petals make. And you don't have to wait a million years for the second and third large petals to dry. That first petal, for some reason, really just gives it the chance it needs to make sure nothing's gonna move around, because it's gonna really want to move around. I don't know what it is about paper flowers, but no matter what the flower is, the petals are always going to want to kind of nest with each other, which doesn't look great ever. I've never really found something that you really want all those petals to nest with each other. You kind of want them to all be their own little thing. You worked so hard to make them just right, and cut them and craft them and fold them and smooth them out, and then so you want them to be their own thing and not really, nest with each other. And now we're just going to add that third petal. Oh, that looks really good. I'm super happy with how this is coming out. So Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna set that aside, and guess what? It's gonna have to dry. I know, it's hard. It's hard. This is a hard one. It's a lot of patience that you need for the paper tulips. And this was one all dry. And now what we're gonna do is secure the whole thing with a little bit of floral tape. And like I said, wait for it to totally dry, because this floral tape will really push, it'll be a bully with your petals. It'll push them around. It'll ruin your perfectly executed petal placement, which is so important with a tulip. You really just want it to be fully dry before you put on the last coat of floral tape. Okay, so now I'm just going to give it one last coat all the way to the end. And something weird that happens with paper flowers, I don't know what makes it happen, but you can see there's like a little bit of floral stem that kind of pokes out, and you can cover that up if you want to. You can leave it if you don't. Like, don't worry about it. Like, the whole thing is, you know, you want it to look nice for sure, but don't stress. Crafts are fun. So, oh, actually, you know what? I have some already cut out over here. Okay, so these are stem strips. And you might say, Sarah, why do you have stem strips? They look exactly the same as that floral tape that you've been using. And I'll agree. They do look pretty similar to the color of floral tape that I use. But I think that anytime that there is a flat color in a flower, it kind of takes away from it. So as kind of a last step, the stem paper comes in a sheet like this. And you just kind of separate it out. I like to only do one side. As you can see, I only cut on this side, and I left the white on the other side just because when they overlap, you won't be able to see it. But make sure that all the white is covered. So, it's super weird, but floral tape seems like it has almost no stick at all. But it actually has enough stick to bond with this paper that I use for the stem paper. So, and because the stem paper has a very, very, very subtle gradient to it, I think it just makes it look like it was live, or it is alive, or it's slowly dying in the way that cut flowers are. Okay, so that one was good. We got that all covered, and now I'm just gonna secure that with a teeny bit of floral tape, because I got to the end of that piece of stem paper. And now, because I started at the light end and it went down to the dark, now I'm going to start at the dark end and work its way down again. So I'm just going to trim that white off and start again. And again, you just press it into the stem, into the floral wire, and it sticks. I don't know why it sticks. And you need a really gentle hand with this stem paper. I think that it's very natural to want to almost like pull it, and you don't want to do that because it'll rip. It's a very, very, very thin, delicate paper. But it works so good for this. Awesome. And that actually didn't go all the way to the bottom. And like, if you don't like doing the stem paper, like I said, the floral tape is so close to the stem paper color that you could skip it and it would look almost it would be 99% as good. I just think that one little, I'm obsessed with detail. I don't know if you've noticed from my floral designs, but I really, really am. And so that's just one more little detail that I like to add in, so you don't have to stress about it. That's another reason why I make paper flower kits, is I want you to have the joy of making a really, really, really beautiful paper flower without all the work of painting, because my kits come with all the detail built right in, but otherwise you'd have to like do it all yourself, and that's like, you know, 12 hours worth of work before you even start folding petals. And now I am covering this stem with just a little bit of glue, just to make sure that it is gonna stay exactly the way it is forever. Because I think it came out real good. Awesome. And now you just let that dry, and be careful because there is going to be a minute or two before the glue is completely dry, where it maybe even looks like it could be dry, but you have to wait for it to completely dry, or else when you touch it, it'll just kind of slough off, because it is a really thin, delicate paper. It's kind of like the next step up from tissue paper. You know what they say about wet tissue paper? It's really delicate. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or you can always email me, or I'm on Instagram a lot. That's a really hot place to go see me. That's at Yakawanis, YAKAWONIS on Instagram. I am there a lot. So if you want to get in touch, those are the ways. And if you want to buy the kit that makes these paper tulips, you can go to paperchickadee.net. Thank you so much for joining me. Subscribe to this page if you liked it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.